In Psalm 19 and verse 1, the psalmist says that the heavens are declaring the handiwork of God, and the expanse is declaring the work of his hands. When the scripture says that the heavens are declaring the glory of God, the expanse is declaring the work of his hands, day to day pours forth speech, it's not talking about the Bible in that case. It's talking about the fact that you can look at God's creation and you can see him in it. And that's becoming more apparent as scientists are taking a deeper look at our universe. There's a perspective that exists today in our culture that the more science looks at nature, the further that takes us away from God. And that's clearly not the case. The discoveries that are being made are great for Christians because it's pointing toward the fact that we have a creator and that God exists. I was trying to think of an illustration for this, but you just imagine you've got a little 3-year-old daughter. She's crying in the middle of the night. She's screaming. You come in, what's wrong? There's a monster in my closet. And you say, there's not a monster in your closet. And just go back to sleep. No, there is. Okay, I'll prove it to you. So you go to the door and you open it up, and lo and behold, there's a monster in the closet. That's sort of how scientists are feeling as they're digging into our universe and making discoveries, looking at it under microscopes, looking at the telescopes. They're seeing things that they didn't expect to see. And there was a book that was written by a man named Lee Strobel several years ago that I based this lesson on. And I did a form of this lesson about 4 or 5 years ago, and that's why this gentleman requested it, because it tied into some of the things that Aaron talked about when he came a couple of weeks ago. But this book was written a few years ago, and the whole point of the book is to show how new scientific discoveries are pointing toward God and not away from him. And so I want to show you some of that tonight, especially some of the things that you see under the microscope. Have you heard about the hunt for other planets with life on them? You see it in the news all the time. Scientists have discovered a new planet only 4 light years away from here that might be habitable. And everybody's excited because the whole point of science right now is to find aliens or to discover life somewhere besides Earth. Why is everybody looking for life outside of Earth? I think because if you found it, it would be great evidence against a creator in their minds, to show that evolution is not only possible, but it happens everywhere. So they're always looking for these planets that have life. And, we're constantly finding these new planets that might have everything you need for life. Maybe there's some planet out there that looks like this. Wouldn't that be cool? Cole, do you think there's a planet out there that looks like this? It's got like 3 suns, a couple of moons, maybe some water on it. And what scientists are really hoping to find is maybe there's some worms living in the rocks or in the water or something like that. And so they're looking for planets like this. And what scientists are discovering is that it's really hard to find planets out there like ours, because it turns out we're really special. I've grown up hearing that Earth is not special. It's just ordinary rock floating around, an ordinary sun, and an ordinary part of the universe, and we're hidden back in our galaxy, and we're average in every way. And that's what I've heard. We're not the middle of the universe. We're just boring, average, regular. There's a million of us everywhere. But it turns out that's not true. And if you were to look at us from a telescope from some other planet, light years away, you'd be shocked at how different we are and how perfect we are compared to other planets. Scientists think that there's trillions of, planets like ours out there, and there's advanced civilizations all over the place. You remember Carl Sagan? Carl Sagan wrote some fiction, but he was considered a scientist. But anyway, he said there was 1 million advanced civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. The author of this book, Case for a Creator, says to scientists, life is just like soup mix. You just add water. You can find a planet that has water on it, you'll probably have life. That's what they think. But now they're seeing evidence that Earth is very special and very unusual. Let me just give you a couple of examples of how unusual we are. First of all, if you're going to create life, or if you're going to find a planet that has life on it, first of all, you've got to look for it in the right place. It's like if you're looking for a house, we're trying to find all these addresses to send invitations to people for our visitor day. We're not going to find houses in the middle of the freeway, right? There's no address that puts a house on the freeway. This is ridiculous, or in the middle of the ocean or a lake. You got to find houses in habitable places, and the same is true with planets. There's lots of different kinds of galaxies out there. Those of you who've studied, I wonder if you kids studied the different kinds of galaxies that exist. There's elliptical galaxies, there's spiral galaxies, and I don't remember the third one, I'd missed that on the test. There's irregular galaxies. The kind that we live in, our galaxy, the Milky Way, is an elliptical galaxy. And it's great for finding planets that are habitable because there's a lot of safe zones for planets to be protected from dangers. There's a lot of dangers out in the universe. The universe is full of asteroids, comets, stars exploding, black holes, all the stuff that that books are written about. And we're in this perfect safe zone in our galaxy where not too much is happening. Like our neighborhood is where everybody wants to live. We have a great neighborhood in this part of the Milky Way galaxy. It's not just some boring average place. It's really important that we're here because if we lived in another part of the galaxy, we'd probably be getting hit with a lot more stuff than we are. We also have great neighbors to protect us. And that's a second ingredient that you need to look for as you're finding a habitable planet. A lot of people don't think about this, but Jupiter is a great neighbor to have for the Earth because it's humongous and it protects us. It's like our bodyguard. It's the Earth's bodyguard. It's shielding us from asteroids and from comets. As a matter of fact, not too long ago, I think within the last year, Jupiter got hit by this comet. Did you know that? Jupiter got hit by a huge comet and it made the news, and scientists have pictures of it and it's really cool. But you can also find a picture online of Jupiter and all of the damage it's received in the recent past. Like there's a bunch of holes in Jupiter, even though it's a gas giant, it's not a rock, but there's a bunch of holes in Jupiter where stuff is hitting it, has hit it. And again, that's great for us because it didn't hit us. Jupiter, it's so big, its gravity is pulling things towards it and away from us. What would happen if we didn't have Jupiter? What would happen to us? Well, Brett, there's the end of the earth. Because Jupiter wasn't there to protect us. And so we got hit by that comet instead. That'd be a bummer. But God keeps us safe. Another great thing that we have that is perfect for life is we're the perfect distance from the sun. And the scientists call this the Goldilocks zone. You remember Goldilocks, who went into the house of the three bears and tried the different porridge, and the first porridge was too hot, and the second porridge was too cold, and then the third porridge was just right. The Goldilocks zone is that just right zone where a planet needs to be the perfect distance from the sun so that we're not burning up, and not too far away so it's not ice cold on the earth all the time. And it's not a very big zone. Like if you move the earth just a little, tiny little bit, just percentage points away from where it is from the sun right now, it would be impossible for us to have life. So not only are we the perfect distance from the sun, but we also have the perfect sun to be orbiting around, because there's different kinds of stars. I think you guys have studied about different kinds of stars, different color stars. Our sun is the exact right mass. It's not too big or small. It's the right color balance, and it's the right composition to support life. There's a lot of other stars out there that are not stable. They're sending out radiation all the time, but because we have the sun that we do, our climate is stable. And just one other thing that's great for life on Earth, and then I'll get to the cool pictures. We have a very special moon. Did you know that our moon is special? Did you think it was just an ordinary moon? It's not. It's a very special moon. One reason that it's not minus 100 degrees in the nighttime and 200 degrees in the daytime here is because of our moon. The moon's gravity keeps the Earth in just the right tension so that it gives us just the right tilt that we need to have a stable atmosphere, stable weather. Also, the moon creates tides in the ocean. What do tides do in the ocean? Keeps nutrients flowing, keeps nutrients moving, which we need for life. But if the moon was too big and too strong, the tides would give us all kinds of problems, be too powerful. The point is, if you think about everything you need for a planet to sustain life, and go down that long list, you'll find them here for the Earth. And also, if you think about how long that list is and how much you need, and the fact that we have it all, it seems like it didn't just happen by chance, that we have the perfect moon and the perfect sun, and we're in the perfect place. Just everything is too perfect for it to have happened by chance. You go into the woods and you find a fireplace going in a cabin. You don't think that was an accident, right? You think somebody did that. And when you come across our home in the Milky Way galaxy, you've got to conclude somebody put us there. It wasn't by accident. All right, so now for the fun stuff. Let's look under the microscope. And this was the request that I had to talk about, life under the microscope, and how it proves that there is an intelligence that made us. Charles Darwin, when he wrote his evolutionary theory, had a list of things that would disprove it if they were ever discovered. And one of those had to do with the cell. Charles Darwin taught that life had to be modified one thing at a time. That one small change happens, and then after a few generations, another small change happens, and eventually, and you add them up, and an animal or a living thing will change from one to another. So an amoeba didn't one day have a nose, eyes, and hands, right? An amoeba just didn't wake up one day and had a face. It would happen very gradually according to evolution. But Charles Darwin said if you could prove that it was impossible to change something one step at a time, that it had to all develop together or it couldn't have developed, then you would disprove his theory. And the example, just to illustrate what I'm talking about, the example that a lot of people use is a mousetrap. Think about what the ingredients of a mousetrap just in your mind right now. You've got a piece of wood, right? You've got a plane of wood. And then you have the metal, I don't know what you call it, the trap part of it that kills the mouse. That's two parts of it. And what's the third thing that you need to create a mousetrap? You need a spring, right? I guess you also need bait, but you need at least a piece of wood and a spring, and you need the trap part, the bar. Could you have just one of those and catch a mouse, and then over time the second one can be added, and then over time a third can be added? Or do you need all of those parts at once in the beginning together in order to kill a mouse? So obviously you need everything together in order for that to work. And this is Charles Darwin's point. If you could ever prove that there's any part of us that had to be there all together and not, and it couldn't have come one at a time, you would disprove his theory. So scientists are now learning as they look under microscopes that there's a lot of things like that in our bodies that could not have happened one at a time. Our cells are a great example of that. Our cells are so complex, but every part was needed from the beginning to work. Evolutionary scientists were hoping they'd look at a cell Remember, in Charles Darwin's day, they didn't know what we know today. They knew there was such thing as a cell, but they figured it was just a real simple thing. That there wasn't much to it, and that's what started life, and then you got to us eventually. They thought cells were real simple, but now they're finding out they're so complex that a lot of science, a lot of biochemists doubt that they could have evolved. One of them was quoted in the book saying, "We've probed to the bottom of life," to the cell. We've probed to the bottom of life, and we're at the level of molecules, and there's complexity all the way down. We thought it was going to get simpler as we got smaller, but it doesn't get simpler. There's a gentleman named Michael Behe and his colleagues. They were one day doing postdoctorate research on DNA, wondering what it would take for life to begin by evolution. And they were going through all the things that would be required for life to begin through evolution: proteins, a genetic code, a membrane, and they finally looked at each other and just said, nah, it's impossible. So here are some reasons why only God could have made cells. Reason number one, a cell is composed of 10 million atoms. It takes 10 million atoms to build one cell. Let's hope my GIFs are working. GIFs, I don't even know how the kids say it these days. Yeah, great. The very first cell that was ever created must have developed itself in a way to reproduce. How complex is reproduction? The very first cell ever created, that ever came into existence, had to have the ability to reproduce. Think about that. Is that possible? In any other way besides God did it? I mean, if you're going to start life, it's got to be able to create life from itself. Otherwise, if the first thing that ever came alive didn't have reproduction, that was the end of life. And then here's the video. I showed this to you a few months ago, but it's just so amazing to me. I want you to see it again. Go ahead, Tim, see if you can play that. And start at about a minute. We don't need to see all the beginning of it. Cells are considered, this is what goes on in the cell. This isn't actual video footage. This is a video that was created. But this is what goes on in a cell. Everything that you see on this video. And you're going to see, as you look at this, why cells are considered high-tech factories. Like Fred owns a factory. He's built a factory that creates canopies. Cells are factories. And they're complete with their own languages. Cells have artificial languages. They have decoding systems. They have memory banks for information storage and retrieval. They have elegant control systems regulating the automated assembly of parts and components. They have error, fail-safe, and proofreading devices utilized for quality control. They have assembly processes involving the principle of prefabrication and modular construction. And cells can reproduce themselves in a matter of a few hours. So all this complexity that you're seeing on the screen right now, if a cell wanted to divide, it's done in just a short time. I wonder how long it would take to reproduce Fred's factory. Probably a long time. But these cells can reproduce themselves briefly. Cells contain machines. If you like machines, cells would be real interesting to you because there's machines in them that control life. And I don't think it's shown it yet, but there's these amazing, like the most amazing thing to me are these little machines that haul cargo from one place in the cell to the other. And these bridges that are being created in the video right now are what they travel along. But they have movement. They have the ability to pull things and move across them. I think it's coming up in a minute. I really want you to see this. These little machines, these little trucks that move along the highways in the cells. These are just the highways forming and reforming. We need one to go across here. Now we're done with it. Let's take it apart. There it is. Look at this machine that moves, a vesicle that moves across these tubules. Just so amazing. Look at that. Motor proteins. And if you look at pictures of them, you look at images of them, that's what they look like. So awesome. What goes on inside a cell. These little machines haul cargo from one place to another. They can turn cellular switches on and off. They act as pulleys and cables, electrical machines. They let current flow through nerves. Manufacturing machines that build other machines. Solar-powered machines inside cells that capture light. They capture energy from light and store it in chemicals. Molecular machinery lets cells move, reproduce, and process food. So just all kinds of amazing things that are going on in cells. So how complicated is this? And is it possible any of this could have happened by accident, or do you think God must have done that? Just so awesome. Tim, can you go on to the next slide? Apparently I can fast forward from this control. No, that's pretty cool. This is a cell, and what you're seeing moving around on the outside of the cell are cilia. Cilia are little oars that are attached to the cell that allow it to move. Cilia are also the hairs in your throat that move mucus up and out of it when necessary. Each cell has about 200 oars all over it called cilia. They move in perfect synchronization to move things around. So how does a cell get from one place to the next? It's got these little oars moving it around. And each of these oars is a motor. Each of these oars has 3 parts. It's got a motor, it's got a rod, and it has a linker. And every single one of these pieces is required for the cell to move. Do you remember the mousetrap illustration that I gave a minute ago? Could you have a mousetrap one part at a time evolve, or do you need all 3 parts right at the beginning for it to work? Well, these cilia require 3 things in order to work, and they couldn't have happened one at a time. They need their motor to turn them, they need their rod, and they need their linker. All 3 of those pieces is required in order to move a cell around. And a lot of Christians ask atheistic scientists, how could these things have evolved? Because they would have had to all come at once, all of a sudden together. You need every single part for it to work, and evolution can't explain that. And one more illustration. We're actually almost done tonight. Take a look at this machine. Some cells have propellers. They have a rotary propeller that pushes them around called flagellum. I believe that's the name for it. But it's way better than any propeller that man has ever made. So this linkage, this machinery that you're looking at is what was designed into the cell to turn it. And this is the base of it. And then coming up off the top of it is the propeller. It's just a single filament that it's flipping around and turning and propelling the bacteria around. But let me just give you a couple of details about this machine that's a part of these cells. First of all, it's 1/10,000th of an inch big. Okay, so the machine you're looking at right now is 1/10,000th of an inch big. Wouldn't it be amazing if a scientist could make a machine, a propeller that small, make news? It's pretty awesome. So you can't see it except under a microscope. It's got a little motor that runs the propeller at 10,000 RPMs. So I don't know about RPMs, but is that pretty fast, Davis? 10,000 RPMs. You got this little propeller, 10,000 revolutions per minute. running the bacteria, running the cell. And then think about this. This is the most amazing fact. If it wants to change directions, this little cell wants to change directions, it's got its propeller moving at 10,000 RPMs per minute, it'll stop it and it'll reverse in the other direction to move it in a different way. It can stop its revolutions in 1/4 of a turn and then begin turning the other way. 10,000 RPMs stops it in 1/4 of a turn and puts it in reverse. I think that would destroy every car that has ever existed if you tried to do that. You tried to throw it in reverse that quickly. But these are designed that way. And then it gets back to going 10,000 RPMs the other way instantly. So that's a machine that God created in nature. You don't think about machines when you think about flesh and blood, right? You think about cells and blood and nerves and systems and all that, but you don't think about machines. We have machines built into our bodies that allow us to function. And this is just one amazing example of that. The heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanses declaring the work of his hands. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their utterances to the end of the world. And those are the speeches that we've examined tonight. I would encourage you, if you haven't read this book, The Case for a Creator, take a look at it and just see how God's creation is pointing toward him and not away from him. There's so many amazing things in there. We can be so thankful for scientists who work hard so that we can learn the wonders of God's creation. Thanks to these guys who are believing in evolution, they're giving us more reason for our own faith, and every part of it is truly amazing. So I appreciate your attention tonight.